All right, welcome everybody. This is Taste of Success, Finance, Data, and Analysis. And welcome, thank you all for coming in today. We have a great set of alumni panelists here, and they're going to share their experience and answer your questions on the topic of finance, data, and analysis. And as we go through this presentation, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat or just use the raise hand feature, and then I can ask you to share the question or I can read the question out of the chat. So we're going to start by asking each of the alumni to give us a brief description of their career path and their current role, and then we'll open it up for student questions. So we can start with Jonathan and then Gideon and then Mark.
Hey, Jonathan, you're on mute.
Sure, I think I just passed a little dead zone there, but I am back. My name is John Lampy. Currently work with the Kohl's Corporation, headquartered over in Menominee Falls, so here in Wisconsin. Transitioned to fully remote, essentially since the start of COVID in March of last year. I'm on the data side. I actually work in information security, run a security architecture team over there. Career-wise, it's been kind of an interesting journey from point A to point B. Spent a number of years as a developer, was more on the marketing and product development side as a product manager for a number of years. In the last probably 7 or 8 years, I've concentrated almost exclusively on cybersecurity and have moved into a couple of roles. And again, as I said, I've been with Kohl's now for about the past 5 years, managing the security architecture team.
Thank you, Jonathan. We can go with Gideon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gideon. I'm actually from Los Angeles, went to school in Wisconsin, and after I graduated, I moved out to New York City, where I spent almost 6 years. My first job, actually, I was working for an insurance company, a Wisconsin one, Northwestern Mutual, which some of you might have heard of. And I did that for about a year, and long story short, I got an opportunity to work on Wall Street as an insurance analyst. I covered insurance stocks for the original Salomon Brothers. When they were bought, my boss and I went to a firm called Bear Stearns, which historically was part of, let's just say the 07, 08 financial crisis. But I had already left long before. I'd moved back to Los Angeles, where I started on the investment management side in the private wealth management group of Morgan Stanley. So now my role is I'm a senior vice president, financial advisor, and senior portfolio manager for our office in Beverly Hills. And I've been doing that for near 20 years.
Thank you, Gideon. Mark, would you like to share your career path and your current role?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Schultz. I graduated out of the business school, and I had a double major in finance and also management information systems. And when I started my career, I've always been in the technology side. I really haven't really used necessarily the finance side from a major. I started off at Arthur Andersen, Accenture in the consulting side. So my whole career has been in technology. Half of it's been in consulting, and the other half has been in industry. So I'm in Cedarburg, so Milwaukee, and so I've done some time with all the big manufacturers here, Johnson Controls and Case New Holland and Rockwell Automation. Most recently, I'm back in the consulting side. I run a consulting company that we build enterprise data warehouses for companies. So an enterprise data warehouse, I guess you could almost think of it like a big Amazon warehouse, where companies will oftentimes have service data and manufacturing data, customer data, orders, and all that. And so what we do is we actually have processes and tools to bring all that data together. We don't do all the sexy reporting, but we build all the plumbing behind the scenes. And so yeah, looking forward to talking with everyone here in the next hour or so. But I also mentioned to the panelists, I've got 3 boys. 1 went through Madison, and I've got 2 at Madison right now. So excited to talk to everyone.
Thank you, Mark. All right, so now we're open to student questions. We can use the chat feature, or you can just raise your hand like I said before. But I do have a few questions to just get us started, but students feel free to just put your questions in there or just raise your hand and ask a question. So, question for the alumni. What advice would you have to students who want to go into the field that you're currently in? And what should students be doing to prepare themselves to be successful in this field?
You want us to just chime in, or how do you want us to handle it? Okay, well, since I asked, I guess I'll just go first if y'all don't mind. Look, I was a political, I majored in international relations and political economics. Okay, so now I'm a financial advisor. Just to put it bluntly, I didn't have the career path that was so set, from like I wanted to be a doctor or something like that, where I knew I was in a regimented program and process. But I will tell you that, my job is basically being as a consultant, but I manage people's finances, their mortgages, their insurance needs, and essentially both sides of their balance sheet. But the hardest part of my job is that I have to ask for money. It's a sales job at the end of the day, and I apologize for that. I'll turn mine on the mute, but one thing I learned in the insurance business is that you have to be willing to go into a room filled with people you've never met before and introduce yourself to everyone. And at some point you find your niche, you find what you're good at, you find the ability to talk to someone about things you might not have any interest in or commonality, but you find common ground. As the years went on, I didn't try and get everyone as a client. I'm very selective now as to who I want in my book of business. But ideally you need to be, let's just say, I get a lot of referrals. I mean, I have a very difficult name to cold call with. So my business has built itself over my reputation and being able to deliver a customized solution to people. At Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, you name it, there's a dozen of choices of reputable firms out there, and there's thousands of people to choose from. But people pick a long-term relationship when they come to me as a client. I'm not gaming against the Reddit, tweets and all that kind of stuff and these meme stocks. That's not my business. So what it takes is really perseverance. You need the personality where you could deal with rejection, because most people don't want to just give you money, especially when you're young. So me 20 years ago, and just to age myself, I'm 48 years old. It was a lot harder to build a book of business. But as you mature and you kind of have been around, the corner several times, you've been through up and down markets, you've been through different presidents, you get used to it where you're managing the long-term relationship, and things will come up as long as you are honorable and do it right. So with that, I want to turn it over to the rest of the panel here, because, we've all had different tracks. So.
Yeah, I would say is, one, think about managing your career, throughout the career. You're managing it, whether proactively or even reactively, but you're managing a career. I'd also say, it's not necessarily going to be linear, right? I don't know how many of us really know what we want to do, at the end of it. And so you probably have a thought right now. And so your career path is going to be not necessarily linear. You may have a feel as you go through school and you graduate school, what types of things you like to do and other things you don't like to do. And so being exposed to many different things, both functional and technical type of skills, is going to give you an understanding what you like to do or not like to do. I would also say, not only at school right now, but also going forward, really harvest all your relationships. Those people that you are meeting with, you work with today, you go to school with today, are going to be opportunities and all down your career there. I would say, I think like one of the last things that I was also came to mind is get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're always, if you get comfortable stepping out of your box, and like Gideon said, going into a room you don't know. I mean, what we do, unless you're doing rote work, there might not be a single day that we do something that's the same. And so getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and what that means is down the road, you're going to be comfortable in any situation. You're going to rely on your skills. You're going to be pull together a plan. You're going to be able to think through things that you've never done before. And if you can do that, you're going to be well positioned to be successful, and whatever that means in your mind.
Thank you both. A follow-up question to that is, do you work with interns or entry-level job holders, and what makes them stand out and what makes their profile stand out?
I could jump on right away. Yeah, we do have we have interns where we are, and so we've got a guy who's working for us. He does summers and also over Christmas, but he's got a comp sci background, he's got a math background, and a data science. So that that's really up our sweet spot, and so he's been able to just look at some of the newer technologies that we're interested in getting in, and so he's a real bright guy. We know he's coming out of Madison, and so yeah, I mean we do, and we're not a big company, but that's been a great avenue for us, and we think going forward we're going to maybe start doing some more hiring at the entry level college level, which we don't do right now, but yeah, we do have interns.
Yeah, Morgan Stanley also, it's a massive firm, and we have a huge internship program. Obviously, things got a little bit turned upside down with COVID, because we used to, I would bring in a summer intern, and usually for about 3 months, just let him sort of hover around me, see how we're managing, our books of business, help me run some, candidly, some data entry and analysis stuff, because ultimately, I can't have an intern doing things like prospecting and sales by, law. I mean, you need securities licenses and whatnot, but the thing that the internships would get, and I'd say there were different experiences based on the, let's just say, the markets. If it was a good market, we'd be my phone doesn't ring as much, so we'd be working more on like the client book analysis and where we could get better efficiencies, or analyzing some of the managers' returns, and you name it. Whereas if it was a challenging market and the phone was ringing, they'd actually get to see the interaction source. I would usually have about one intern a year over the course of like a 3-month summer internship. But I haven't had one in 2 summers now, just because of the way things played out with COVID. But Morgan Stanley offers an internship program, and then through our branch, again, usually if I'm not taking the ones that they give to us to look through, one of the interns was actually a client of mine's son, so who actually worked out great as in terms of his, he was an international relations, but also an econ major, and he was very, very good at what he was doing and trying to learn. So.
This is John. Am I back online now?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll say a couple things on internships as well. Like Morgan Stanley, Kohl's has a fairly extensive internship program. For the last 2 years, we have adapted and made that a fully remote opportunity for the folks to come in and work with us. So that's been something that I think has segued nicely into the fully remote college experience. As much as people enjoyed that or didn't enjoy that, that's something that we're going to continue going forward. And they're typically specialized, again, within Kohl's. We have them that are specific for the IT. I think we pulled in 40 or 50 interns last year. We had 2 of them come through my information security area, and we had a lot of success with them. Actually, typically we extend an offer to about half of them who come through our area. We've had a lot of success developing them within the department. In general, huge fan of internships. I think I had 2 or 3 in my collegiate days as well. They definitely were a leg up on the hiring piece. And since I didn't make a comment on the real early part, other things that stand out with regard to things like internships is the amount that you can be published from a technical point of view, essentially before graduation, with opportunities like you have available on GitHub, the ability to contribute to open source projects, even in terms of some of the magazines, publications, online websites where you have a chance to speak about technology or speak about its interactions. There's all sorts of things that we look at on a fairly regular basis in terms of candidates we look to hire that will put people in that top tier.
Awesome. Thank you all for answering that. A question that I have is, what are some of the skills that you developed at Wisconsin that have helped you over the course of your career?
You want to pick one of us? I mean, I don't always chime in first. Mark, why don't you go first?
You know, I mean, the foundation skills that I got on the technology side were just, real solid. I mean, I already had a technical aptitude, and I had some computer science in high school, but that curriculum was just really solid. I found, the group projects, right? You maybe had been working more as an individual contributor. So what you're going to find, in your career, you're going to be working with people. And so the projects that we had to work with, I think that was real valuable to get you started in your career. I was in the business school, and I also had a finance undergrad, which I mentioned. And so throughout I didn't have a business, background. I cut lawns during my high school days. So, a lot of that, debits and credits was pretty foreign to me. And so I came through the tech side, but now as a chief operating officer and what I'm doing now, it's all the finances. I work with our CFO. And so I find that foundation, although I never pursued that as a career, I'm finding that very valuable in what I'm doing now. So, having that foundation that, now, years later, be able to put it all together and make things happen has been great.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. As a international relations, it's very spread out. You take a little history, a little econ, a little poli-sci. I think just from a perspective of, if I were to go back and I say, what did I really get that was valuable? Econ was definitely helpful. If I were to go back, I would have taken specifically some more accounting classes. I don't think in any business, whether you're running your own, working for a finance corporation, it's never going to hurt you. In fact, I think it's invaluable, and I would almost mandate that every student take some sort of an accounting class. History was great. I also spent my junior year abroad in Spain, which in my career path, I was in a foreign land. I learned the language, I'm fluent in Spanish. I'd taken 4 years in high school, but it was really just learning how to take Spanish tests. Whereas there, I learned how to communicate. And, when you see the world, you see all different aspects. And in my business, that's important because we're not projecting a certain product. I'm not selling one specific type. I'd say my best tool in my business are my ears. I mean, I have to listen to each individual's goals and objectives. And then that's how we could tailor the perfect solution. It's not a Morgan Stanley way. I say that, like, a really good advisor, a really good consultant is listening to what the client wants. The product falls out of the sieve. I see someone had asked, how do you manage that with a work-life balance too? And, that comes later. Just candidly, that is something once the roots have really, put themselves in the ground and you have a good book of business in my world, you can say no to that meeting that's out of the way or the client you're not really sure you want to have. I do set schedules. The reason I'm working from home today is I have 3 children and, 2 of them have club soccer later. And, Tuesday afternoons, I'm not available. And my clients actually respect that now. Before I was very gun shy to say that to people and say, like, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Now I say it with pride. So, I will tell you, even as students, that you have to block out times that are your time, whether it's your time for studying, your time for socializing, your time to do nothing. I mean, it is invaluable to be committed to some sort of a regimen, because long term, it's what it's going to take to have some sort of a structure that you can manage. And I'd say that's in all aspects of life. But, I was just trying to make sure that question didn't get overlooked. I saw it pop up there. But, again, I don't know what any of these students on this panel are majoring in, but I could tell you it's never going to hurt you to take an accounting class. Just have some general accounting background. It also depends on your career path. I mean, look, computer science in 1995, when I graduated, it was relatively new. It was there, but it wasn't as dominant as coding and things are these days in your world. So I would say, and I have 3 children, I hope they're taking coding soon. I mean, it just seems like I have to. So, don't look at necessarily what's popular now. Just imagine, 20 years from now, and technology is not going away. And to keep up with it is vital. So have the tools to understand that and run a business with it. And I would also say your computer skills are going to be vital. Okay, so make sure you stay in the A game there.
So I'll go last again. This is John. I picked up MBA from UW a couple of years ago, and I would say the skills that it's from kind of a let's say a type A management approach to be able to look at things in a longer term view, to integrate the strengths of teammates, to be able to speak more clearly to issues that appeal to me, and be able to speak to them in business terms. And the sort of second, one of the other speakers here, a solid understanding of between proposal and its value, using actual financial terms, using accounting, being able to present that idea will propel that idea in a conflicting environment of enterprise. So a number of those things picked up as part of the MBA program. Thankfully, they entered the tool sets and integrated them in terms of being able to drive some of the technical initiatives that I was interested in over the years as well.
Hey, Vinya?
Thank you all for answering that. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I can add, like it looks like someone posted about work-life balance, and that's a good question, right? Where that was probably a different answer, 10, 20 years ago, because I've been, like I said, I was both in consulting and in industry, and on the consulting side, it was pretty much Monday through Friday consulting. Get on an airplane, come back Friday night, go back on Sunday, go back, mostly Sunday night. So I mean, that was a grind, right? I mean, I was getting, really good skills. So I'm looking at kind of long-term, what skills am I building all those relationships, but there was no way that I was going to have a family doing that. And I knew I wanted to, get married and start having kids. And I just didn't, that wasn't the environment for me. Then, you look at industry, a lot of these bigger multinationals, you still might end up doing some travel. So I've had, non-consulting positions that I've traveled the world for global multinationals. So now, now we're in this age of, remote work, right? COVID. We're a consulting company. We've been remote since like 2008. So we're 100% remote. As a small company, it allows us to serve the whole North America market, Canada and US. And then also for our consultants, we want just the best talent. So we go wherever we need to go. Now, I see that happening more and more. I think a lot of companies aren't even going to go back at all. Now, I wouldn't say you're out of the woods with relationships, right? If you still have people at home working remote, I still think you're going to have struggles with, taking care of the kids and all that, even though you're not working remote. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot better for folks these days having a career with family, but I think you're going to have some different challenges. I know one comment, as I was working, I had people on the East Coast and the West Coast, so my days got to be pretty long, and I would get off the phone, and then my wife would start talking about her day, and I wanted to start solving her problems, right? I was like, oh, why don't you don't talk to that person? And that turned out to be, not what she wanted to hear, right? She just wanted me to listen. But as a remote worker, what she told me to do is have my virtual commute. Go before you engage with the family, go read the paper or go for a walk. So normally you've got your 20-minute or hour commute that we had before. Now I was working out of home, and you really need like this buffer to, wind down before you engage with the family. So I thought that was a pretty interesting observation. And got to walk in, read the paper before I got engaged, and that's something again about work balance in a remote world.
Yeah, and it's also important for the students to realize that, I'm sure Jonathan, Mark and myself all have the same thing. You have the most time to work your hardest in your 20s. Life just changes you, whether you get married, have children. I remember even in college, my friends and I, we would talk about, oh, when we're traveling for business, and it sounded so great. I can't think of something I want to do less than have to get on an airplane for a meeting. I used to do that in my analyst days. I mean, I'd fly into Chicago for like a 3-hour meeting and I'd be home. And I remember when I was in college, I was like, wow, that sounded so cool. And it's horrible. The remote world has actually made things a lot better, except, from my perspective, when my book of business and the way we manage our clients, I say, I can't do this remotely forever, because ultimately it comes down to sitting in people's, offices, living rooms, it's handshakes and hugs. So it has to be personal or the robots are taking over. And candidly, I don't compete with the robots. Those aren't my kind of clients. So, the work-life balance is something that is always adapting, and it's going to adapt with your lifestyle. Some of you will get married, some of you won't, some of you will have kids, some of you won't. I mean, I don't know, but you have to, going back to what Mark said with the, virtual commute or things like that, you have to make certain hours of the week, even if it's for the gym or it's something you like to do, you have to block those out and make them holy, uninterruptible time, because you owe it to yourself. And when you start doing that, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You start making blocks of time where you're available, and it's a lot easier to focus. Whereas if you're always available and you're always answering emails on your phone, and it's like you're just never going to put it down. It's like try and watch a movie with your phone. You can't, because you're always going to be checking other things. So I think it's really the work-life balance strategy is to make a structure where, you cannot, I don't believe in the word multitasking, because to me, it just means you're doing a lot of things less focused. So when you do block out your work-life balance in a more structured way on your calendar, I know what my week ahead looks like. I know what my month in general looks like, but then as those adapt, I still have my time for the gym. I have my once a month meeting with friends, where we meet. I mean, it's just things like that become more important. So, it'll evolve, but I will tell you that you have the most time now as students to work your hardest, because you'll have a lot less time when you start having kids or other work obligations or other colleagues. I mean, there's a lot of interference when you get older. So.
All right, I'll jump in on that one. With regard to probably a lot of upcoming life changes for everybody's in the audience here. Yes, every single one of those life changes is probably going to affect the amount of time that you have to spend on work, on life, and in other places. So in terms of specific advice, there's typically an imperative to front load before you get into all of these other obligations that you have to deal with. And I think that's a more specific piece of advice. Front load in terms of, if you are willing to take a more challenging opportunity early in your career, you'll have that under your belt. Is it something that you need to back off on later, or do you enjoy the challenge of that work and you want to dive into it and make that a 3 to 5 year career arc, as opposed to I'm going to dive into this major project? So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it, and the reason why I talk about the front loading piece is depending on the career you choose, there's an opportunity to essentially give yourself a little bit of financial cushion. Again, before other obligations that you take care of family or whatnot come in there. And that ties into work-life balance, because if you have that financial cushion, it's been called other terms earlier in my career, but basically that gives you the ability to make some choices in terms of where you want to go. If you're unhappy with work-life balance, it gives you the ability to extend the job search. It gives you the ability to perhaps try a different career path within the organization or in a different organization. You find that this truly doesn't matter. And I guess the third thing I want to throw on there is peer-to-peer and up and down communication is essential. First of all, making sure that you've got friends outside your company. It sounds a little odd for me to say right now, since a bunch of you are in school, but a lot of people get focused essentially their main friend group is in the company that they work for. To become too isolated in that, to lose a sense of perspective as to what is a good work-life balance. So it's important to keep those conversations going with people outside the company. And when I say up and down communication street, this is primarily starting out to communicate with your leader ahead of you regarding what's an appropriate workflow, and as you said, which times are or are not available. it's important to set those expectations and degree of flexibility and understand if there's flex in there. And as you move up the career ladder, to continue to have those discussions and to be cognizant of your employees as you start to acquire them along your career, and making sure that in terms of matters of employee retention and whatnot, work-life balance continues to be one of those attributes that you put on table in terms of total compensation and reasons to stay with your organization. So, a bunch of advice to throw at you in a short amount of time, but there it is.
Thank you all for answering that. That was great. Yeah. Another question is, what have been the most rewarding or satisfying parts of your work, and what are some of the more challenging parts of your work?
I could start. One of the things I really had fun with was I worked for Rockwell Automation, and we were starting to move into the Asia Pacific market. And I'm in the tech space, so my job was to basically put all the business systems in throughout the region. And so having to get that plan started and put together a team and engage all the country managers, pick the technology, to put together a pilot site, and then basically roll it out. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I was a Wisconsin guy, so pretty sheltered Midwest, and so it really opened my eyes to the rest of the world. And I would say probably kind of lumped all of Asia Pacific into one big group. And and you go there, it's just so much going on. And so from a career perspective, it was a big program. I got a chance to meet a lot of great people from different cultures. I had a real nice success there. But that was all, that was, big, I look back, and that whole thing was, was a lot of fun. And so it was fun, but also, we got a lot done then.
I mean, I'll tell you, my job, it's truly, you make your own bed. It's that, no one hands us clients. The funny thing is my first client was a baby, because a friend of mine had a baby and asked to open up a college savings account. And the funny thing is that child is actually applying to college. But, when you look at the trajectory of it, I knew that, okay, you take care of the goal. I also got my friend's money. I have his parents' money. I've done their mortgage twice. I've done their life insurance. And it's like, you look at the fact that I now own the family tree. And it's a great success, because if I was focusing on the sale was worthless in a dollar term. But, I also remember the first time I actually was really competing for a big account, and I'm going to lose plenty. I say the same thing about mortgages. It's a relationship thing. Mortgages are a rate thing. We don't always win, and it's okay. But I remember when I got my first like really big account, and it's just one of those things. And it's not that, I presented without saying the word, or my brochure was best. I don't use that kind of stuff or tactic. I just think that, whether it was the relationship or really focusing in on the client, I knew I won. And it was just one of those success feelings too, that, when they come now, I'd say you sometimes have to stop more when you're older and smell the roses, because 20 years ago, some of the clients I'm getting now, I mean, I would have absolutely like fainted, if I had such a success. But, it's just that, you definitely do have to stop and smell the roses, along the way. So that's another thing I say. I learned to do that.
So, Rowan, in terms of some of the rewards, I think a lot of that comes to do with employee and sometimes peer development. Being in the industry long enough to see a couple people that you worked with that were working for you, being able to watch some of their where they're headed off to where they learned earlier, and as they come to various companies, whether it's trading personnel or actually helping you on to that next opportunity. In terms of challenges, again, work in tech, and so keeping up with the technology and being able to stay abreast, relevant, and being able to use it while also being effective in a managerial capacity, that's a real hard balancing act, because there's definitely some trepidation at the folks who are in these roles. Basically, how far can you get away from actually using the technology before you're not sure how to direct using the technology? So there's a lot of day-to-day challenges that go along with that. It's one of those things that, again, having those communications with your peer group, and especially with the folks that you work with and serve, hopefully keep connected going forward.
Yeah, I'd also say, in my environment too, there's just so much data and so much noise all the time, whether it's from the news or the general markets, that, one of the reasons, and this is not an advertisement to get back in the office, just full disclosure, but one of the reasons my partners and I really do want to be in an office environment more is because there are a lot of our other colleagues, we'll discuss ideas or, comment on certain things, and you just don't get that out of this kind of a Zoom. But if I hear someone talking about a certain strategy in the markets or things coming up with the clients, it's just other experiences that I could learn from. Whether I agree or disagree, it's learning, period. So, I keep my ear open to what other people are working on all the time, because I get ideas, or I get, contrasting ideas. It's all valuable to me. So, I used to try and optimize what I'm doing versus someone else or versus the competition. I'm like, sometimes the competition is giving you plenty of ideas, even if you disagree with it. So it's another, I think, very important thing. I said earlier, these are your most powerful tools in my business, is listening and learning come, hand in hand. And, I listen a lot to what my colleagues are doing, even if we have completely different books of business.
Yeah, I want to add, I think part of that question was also challenges, and comment I would have is just, I've talked earlier, and the other panelists have talked about, relationships and people. And, I have found that also at the company level, every company's got to have its own culture, and, they're going to be different. And so, I've been in places that, maybe we're really aligned with, my personality. Let's get it out on the table. Let's be transparent. Let's get the facts. Where do we want to go? And just start, go. And, that's always been my mentality, and I've gravitated. Then I've gone to other places, other companies, and the culture, I'm the same thing. Where do you want to go? Okay, here's a plan. Let's go. And they were so slow and risk averse. And so, it just, it's struggle for me, and it's probably a struggle for them. And so, just as there's culture fits with relationships, as you're looking for companies, you'll more and more figure out what your culture is and what you like or don't like, and try to ask those questions. Try to find someone who works there, read about it, so that how you want to operate, how you want to work, is going to be aligned up with the company you're going to be working with.
Thank you all for answering that. The next question that we have is, what are the employment trends in your field or your company that students should know about? I know, Gidon, you talked about coding and how those jobs are not going to be going away anytime soon. And what will you all have to say about employment trends?
I mean, it's hard from my perspective to talk about it like Morgan Stanley, because there's so many different career paths within my company. Whether a lot of people are, let's just say, in the investment banking program, which is completely different than mine. I was in the equity research side. I mean, I used to work at the Trade Center, and I mean, there it was a serious grind, and that's obviously changed. It's still a grind now, but in my profession, the numbers of success that people, because essentially it's a commission job or a fee-based job, if you want to call it that. So I think the success rate in my type of a business is still less than 2%. And the reason is because they'll give you a 6-month to a 1-year training program and then put you out there where you have to go in and get money. You have to be able to raise money. They don't hand you accounts. And the tools from a technology perspective, since the day I started, I mean, our platform is phenomenal, but at the heart of it, it's the same job, and that you have to be able to go out there and find business, which is networking. Okay. Networking with the right people and having the tenacity as well as, let's just say, the guts to go out there and just, like I say, if you have 1,000 people you want to prospect, whether you're friends and family, colleagues, I mean, whatever you want to say, I'll tell you, maybe 1 out of 1,000 will become a client. So where are you going to find your next 1,000 people to go after and really keep pushing and pushing? The firm is very supportive, but the success rate still remains at those levels, which is to me kind of shocking. Now, other places or other industries, whether you're in an apprenticeship kind of a program or you're moving your way up a managerial track, that's different. So, my manager used to be actually a trainee with me as well, but now, he's my age and he's my branch manager. So he went down the manager track, not the advisor track. So it really depends on where, and I say, do what you love to do at the end of the day, because it's just not worth it to look back. I don't want to be a 48-year-old and consider a career change, I manage my own book of business, which is great. I don't want to get repositioned somewhere. But if you love what you do, you're going to be on some sort of a track anyway. But from Morgan Stanley's perspective, just to be clear, it's challenging because it's not like they have one program for every different type of job that they're starting. We have advisor training programs, we have managerial training programs, and so on and so on. So there are many paths, and depending on which students are interested, I'm happy to share that one-on-one with some of the ones that go through our branch, even where some of the interns pivot from. So.
Yeah, Mark here. I would say what we're seeing is, the automation is coming. That could be viewed as good or bad, but they talk about it in the news, and what we're seeing, the automation's coming. And so, the space that we're in, building these enterprise data warehouses, we're seeing like ratios of like 100 to 1 in the amount of, we call like a man month when you work, like a person works a man month, that's 1 month. 12 a year is that's a 12 man months. Now you start getting up there, so you got 2 people over 12 months working, 6 months each. So we work in that. So, what we're seeing in the industry, what are probably, I guess, our competitors are doing, it might take like 100 man months to do something. We have automation. Yeah, we're doing that in a month. And so it's kind of displacing the industry. We just talked to a client today, and they have 300 people right now that I just know they're not going to need 300 when we're done with that. And so, but to me, that opens up 2 things. One is I still need people that understand the automation. They still got to run that, it just doesn't run by itself. So we're going to need people that run the automation. And then 2, in our space, I mentioned we build all the plumbing. It's not all that sexy. We're going to make that better, but you still need people to do something with that data, whether they're in healthcare or they're in manufacturing or they're in finance or insurance. You still need people to do something with that data. So, in theory, we're moving probably gross resources from builders, and we're just going to get more efficient at that. But then, we're going to need more people that, have, subject matter experts. What are they going to be good at? How do we use the data? So again, I'd say, be aware, whatever you're doing now, automation is coming. For not all things, though. Not all things.
So I'll be on that last bit. Automation and automating things is generally what I've been doing my entire career. Information security as well. I would say more specific skill sets do you want to get up on right now? I mentioned at the top, the GitLab, the ability to essentially work on an application, publish it into a code repo, be able to take that, take the executable, and maybe even publish that out to a container and get that running somewhere. One of the trends that goes back and forth in the IT industry is a specialization in terms of which layer you're at. Are you working on the user interface layer, the websites and whatnot, working on the database layer? or as the trend happened, it snapped back the other way probably about 7, 8 years ago into this thing called full stack. Now, full stack is a fancy way of saying you basically understand the technology from the database all the way up to the user interface that's put in the website in front of an end user. And by and large, the ability that you can be comfortable with any stack of technologies, show that you can basically understand that from the back end all the way up to the front end. And beautiful thing is that most computer science educations do exactly that. Then you'll have the wherewithal to essentially step in at an entry-level job pretty much in any tech organization doing a variety of things. So I'm not a shill for GitLab or GitHub or even some of the Microsoft technologies that provide the same thing. But basically, if you can demonstrate that you can put an application together top to bottom, publish it, and get it running, that's going to be, like I said, during the internship part, that'll put you ahead above a lot of your peers as you go into that first set of interviews.
Awesome. Thank you all for answering that question. One question just came in here. Are any positions in the finance field related to math, stat, but not too reliant on coding?
I mean, I could take that. Yes, I mean, simply yes. Yeah, the analyst training program, and again, going back to my stressing of the value of an accounting class, it's all math. Understanding both sides of the balance sheet, whether you're analyzing a company or a specific client, is important. When I was an analyst, I mean, all I did, and I don't want to just call it data entry, but I'm saying Excel is your friend. Microsoft Excel, be good at it, be very good at it. I was on that thing pretty much all day. And in between Excel, I was translating what I was doing there into words on a document to then publish for our analyst reports. But it was all math, okay? So, was I a math major? No. In fact, I had to go after when I was working at an insurance company and kind of I was self-taught on the accounting. How did I do that? Some of my friends were in the investment banking program at the time. It was Payne Weber or Solomon Brothers or Merrill Lynch. And they gave me some of their Excel programs to kind of muddle through. And I took some of the core, 10Q filings, and I went through and I made my own and I worked my way through the math. And I learned how to do it myself. But there are a lot of those. The thing about the analyst program, though, is you have to turn that math into words and have some sort of a writing skill where you can actually make a report people want to read about. So there are absolute opportunities, using that kind of, call it mathematical background. My boss at the time was a math wizard, but he also was a great writer. Something you could learn, something I learned to do better as well. But many attracts for the math people, especially in quantitative analysis, bottoms up analysts, whether they're on a sell side or a buy side research firm, there's a lot of opportunity.
I'll throw in a little bit on the finance side again from Coles. Again, I spend my time on the IT, but things don't move really anywhere unless they have the backing of a financial plan behind them. So we work with a number of financial colleagues who did not come up from a coding background to basically make business cases, to do things like express a project in terms of a capitalized project versus just an expense that's immediately going to run down and slam our bottom line. So we have a lot of partners that we value coming from the IT side. On the finance side, we very clearly did not start off in a tech background, but are invaluable to keeping tech projects moving through to benefit the whole company.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Another question for all of you, I guess, is what does your day-to-day look like?
I could start with this Mark here again. I've always got, one-on-one meetings with staff. Usually that I probably have one of those a day. I've got customer meetings that are in there. That might be current projects or future projects. And then I've got a couple of different to-do lists, right? I've got like a short-term to-do list and I've got longer-term to-do lists. So, I'll start, where I've got free time, I'll start usually at the beginning of the week, I'll start blocking what my week looks like. If I'm starting to see holes with my calendar, I'm starting to carve out some of those short-term projects and then also starting to carve out the long-term projects. So, you really got to be thinking longer term, but you still have tactical things you got to do on a daily basis.
I could chime in next. Just to give you guys a frame of reference for time, the market opens at 9:30 New York time, stock market, and it closes at 4. I would live in Los Angeles, so I've always been the early bird. Even when I lived in New York, I used to get to the office at 7:30 a.m. So here, my day usually, I wake up at 5. I'm either driving to my office in Beverly Hills at 5:30, because candidly, it takes me 25 minutes instead of an hour and a half if I left anywhere after 6. So, I save time that way, but I also get to the office before the markets are opened. I've, read through or deleted probably 30 to 40 emails. And, my day usually starts with cleaning up that side, call it the corporate or the communication side, before most people are even at their desk. A lot of my time intraday before the markets are closed, again, we have a big team, but as to twice a week, we sort of have a team huddle right now where we just go over on Monday the week ahead, and then Wednesday just kind of the week that is currently in motion, with our senior associate, and she organizes everything from new client accounts to the wires that are going out in financial transactions. Trading though, if we're doing any, and I don't do a lot of trading for clients, but has to be done prior to 1 o'clock. However, after 1 o'clock is usually when I'll have most of my meetings with clients, where we will set no less than an hour to meet in their office. Obviously COVID rules are different, but have a lunch, go to their office, go over a financial plan, go over portfolio reports. But, usually I have to block out per client at least about 30 minutes. It's just a typical requirement. I say if I'm going to have lunch with someone, it's usually well over an hour. But I generally have 4 to 5 meetings with different clients or phone calls a day. Our team will deal with the wires and the mortgage processing stuff, behind the curtain, I'd say. But the day-to-day is pretty set in that I tell people my mornings are usually getting in before most people get to work. In between that time and 1 o'clock, I've structured it so that financial transactions that have to occur are either being handled by myself or my team. So we have to alert people to what's coming ahead. We do get emails for, clients, hey, I need this done. And, we have what we call, the fire drill scenario, where someone needs something done ASAP, especially around tax time. And, we just sort of set the road ahead. We try and anticipate that as much as possible. And then my afternoons, like I say, after this meeting, I have a club soccer practice. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I take my boys to soccer. So during those meetings, during those times, the only people that could reach me are via email, or if I feel like taking the call, I will. But if not, I'd say twice a week I have that. So everything in between that, I have to set ahead. And, I usually ask people for a meeting, 2 weeks in advance. So that I really, I don't like to schedule a meeting for tomorrow, today, unless it's an emergency, because I like time to prepare, and I like the client to prepare too.
Well, I finally came to a good stopping point, so I'm actually going to put myself on camera here for a little bit. I'll say I typically aim for core working hours between 8 o'clock and about 4 o'clock. And take a healthy lunch in the middle of there as well. I also, though, do a bunch of time shifting. And so probably 2 to 3 days a week, including maybe one of those days is on a weekend, is where I basically am going to put in anywhere from 2-3 hours, catching up on email, doing some sort of a special project. And that may be something like, explaining how information security is going to present itself to the rest of the organization for the next year or so. I do definitely time shift and reserve some time in the evenings, which is easier since I have older kids now, basically to get a lot of those tasks that I can't get done during the day. During the day, I would probably say that I spend 5-6 hours on video conference calls during the day. I do vary those. Typically, I have at least a once a week one-on-one with each of my direct reports. I also have a functional meeting with my teams separately with the architects and a group of assistants that watch business groups called the advisors. Make sure that I work with them. And then there's meetings that I have basically upward with a CISO and other more senior managers within Kohl's themselves. The fire drills that I get involved in, and we always tend to have them, these tend to be sort of what I would probably call like a pre-breach event. Being in the security side, we've encountered a condition somewhere that makes a number of us worried. Being in security architecture, we're typically the group that's called upon to inventively develop a solution to that and get that deployed in relatively short order before anybody essentially really notices that anything went awry. So, you know, frankly, those are part of the reason why I enjoy this line of work. And that's one of the things that I think is going all the way back to life balance. I mean, what do you want out of your job? What is it that you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy being sort of that firefighter who can tackle these things, but basically is going to receive none of the credit because it silently went away? Okay, that appeals to me. That's part of my one of the things that takes me to work every day. Making sure that you have that integrated into whatever career plan you choose is important. Is it what you want to do? Is it something that you enjoy doing, even though it's going to steal a bit of time away from your schedule, your meetings, and everything else you're going to plan to do in the middle of the day?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we are at the end of our time. So thank you, students, for joining the session today. And thank you so much, Gidon, Mark, and Jonathan for coming in and talking to the students. I'm sure they valued your advice and just hearing more about your career path. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone. I'm sure we'll all take questions if you have any follow-up questions for us after. Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you guys, too.
Thanks.